In June 2015, the luxurious cruise liner Elysium Dawn departed from the port of Barcelona, setting sail for a 7-day journey across the Mediterranean. Among the 1,300 passengers on board were Melanie Weston and her husband, Alex, a couple who, on the surface, seemed to be embarking on a dream vacation. For Melanie, this trip was meant to be a fresh start, a chance to rekindle their marriage after months of growing distance. But as the massive ship cut through the glistening waves, something in the air felt off. From the first evening, tensions between Melanie and Alex were noticeable. Other passengers recalled the strained conversations, the uncomfortable silences, and the way Alex often seemed disengaged. While Melanie tried to keep up appearances, smiling, ordering cocktails, and taking photos, there was an underlying unease in her expression. The crew members, particularly the waitstaff in the dining areas, would later remember their interactions vividly. On the second night, things became more public. A heated argument erupted between Melanie and Alex at the ship's main restaurant. Witnesses described how Melanie, her voice barely controlled, accused Alex of hiding something. He responded coldly, dismissing her concerns and walking away. As Melanie sat there staring at her untouched plate, the tension in the room was palpable. By the third evening, Alex was spending more time apart from her. While Melanie took walks alone along the deck, staring out at the endless horizon, Alex was seen in the ship's casino, laughing and drinking with another woman. That woman was later identified as Sarah Collins, an attractive, confident brunette who had caught Alex's attention. Security footage later showed the two of them whispering at the bar, their body language far too intimate for mere acquaintances. Melanie, it seemed, was aware of what was happening. A housekeeper, Carla Gomez, later reported seeing her alone in the hallway near their suite, wiping away tears. She overheard Melanie muttering something under her breath, something that sounded like, "You won't take everything from me, Alex." On the fourth night, everything changed. As the cruise liner neared the waters of Greece, Melanie Weston vanished. The first person to notice something was wrong was Carla Gomez. At 8:00 a.m., she arrived at the Weston suite for the scheduled housekeeping service. The moment she stepped inside, she felt something was off. The bed was untouched, as if no one had slept in it. The balcony doors were wide open, allowing the morning breeze to stir the curtains. There were faint signs of struggle, furniture slightly out of place, a glass knocked over, and a sharp scent of alcohol lingering in the air. Carla hesitated for a moment before stepping out onto the balcony. The sea stretched endlessly before her, but there was no sign of Melanie. A deep sense of dread settled over her. Something was wrong. By 8:30 a.m., Captain Stephen March was alerted, and within minutes, the ship's security team was dispatched. As they entered the Weston suite, their expressions turned serious. Then, the announcement came over the ship's intercom. "Attention all passengers. This is an urgent notice. If anyone has seen Melanie Weston in the last 12 hours, please report to security immediately. Your cooperation is critical." The search had begun, but as the morning unfolded, it became clear that Melanie Weston was nowhere to be found. At exactly 9:00 a.m., the tension on Elysium Dawn reached a breaking point as the news of Melanie Weston's disappearance spread through the ship like wildfire. The once carefree passengers, sipping their morning coffees and lounging by the pool, were now murmuring in hushed tones, exchanging nervous glances as the ship's crew moved with urgency. Over the loudspeakers, the captain's voice broke through the murmurs, clear and authoritative, instructing everyone to remain calm while the onboard security team conducted a thorough search of the vessel. Every hallway, every deck, every corner of the ship was checked, but there was no sign of Melanie. By 9:30 a.m., officers were gathered in the ship's security room, staring at the flickering surveillance monitors, combing through the night's footage for any clue that might reveal what had happened. At exactly 12:47 a.m., Melanie appeared on one of the screens near the lounge area, dressed in a flowing white dress, her expression troubled. She wasn't alone. Several other passengers millowed around, but she kept her distance, clutching a cocktail glass tightly in her hand. Then she glanced at her watch, hesitated for a moment, and turned away, disappearing down the dimly lit hallway leading to the luxury suites. She reappeared at 1:15 a.m., stepping into the corridor leading to her and Alex's suite. The footage showed her stopping just outside the door, taking a deep breath before pushing it open. Exactly 47 seconds later, Alex Weston entered The same hallway, walking with a measured pace. He didn't knock. He didn't hesitate. He simply unlocked the door and stepped inside. That was the last confirmed sighting of Melanie Weston. Security officers paused the footage, leaning in closer as they fast-forwarded through the next few hours. At 1:30 a.m., there was movement again. The balcony doors of the Weston suite were open, the white curtains shifting slightly in the breeze. A figure emerged. The grainy footage made it difficult to discern any details, but the silhouette was unmistakably female. She stepped forward, hesitating for a fraction of a second before leaning slightly over the railing. Then abruptly, the figure disappeared from view. The screen went still. The officers exchanged grim looks. The time was now 10 a.m. The Italian Coast Guard had been notified. The official report listed Melanie Weston as a missing person, possibly lost at sea. But the security team wasn't convinced. Something about the footage, about the untouched bed, about the eerie silence of the suite, it all pointed to something far more sinister than an accident. By the time the sun cast its golden reflection across the water, one thing had become terrifyingly clear. Melanie Weston wasn't missing. She was gone. At exactly 10:30 a.m., the ship's security team summoned Alex Weston for questioning. He arrived at the security office looking composed, dressed in a crisp white shirt and beige trousers, his expression carefully neutral. He sat down across from the lead investigator, his fingers interlocked, his posture rigid. When asked about Melanie, he sighed, shaking his head, explaining in a measured voice that she had been drinking the night before, that she had been emotional, that maybe she had gone out onto the balcony for fresh air and lost her balance. His tone was steady, but his hands told a different story, fidgeting, clenching, loosening. The investigator studied him, noting every hesitation, every flicker of unease in his otherwise controlled demeanor. When asked why he hadn't reported her missing that morning, Alex simply shrugged and said he assumed she had gone for breakfast, that he wasn't worried. But there was something wrong with his story. The security officer pressed him, asking why their suite looked untouched, why the bed hadn't been slept in. Alex hesitated just a fraction too long before answering that he had fallen asleep on the couch. The officers exchanged glances. Something wasn't adding up. At 11:30 a.m., housekeeper Carla Gomez was brought in for questioning. She recounted how she had seen Melanie 2 days prior, alone in the hallway, wiping tears from her face. But it was what she heard that sent a chill through the room. She repeated the words she had overheard in a whisper, "You won't take everything from me, Alex." The implication was clear. There was something deeper at play, something far beyond a simple marital dispute. The officers dug further, pulling up records of Alex Weston's financial transactions. At exactly 12:15 p.m., they uncovered a chilling detail. 3 months before the cruise, Alex had taken out a life insurance policy on Melanie. The payout? 2 million euros. The sole beneficiary? Alex Weston. The security team exchanged tense glances, the weight of the discovery settling heavily in the room. This was no longer a case of a missing person. This was something far darker. At 1:00 p.m., Captain Stephen March made a decision that sent a ripple of shock across the cruise liner. Elysium Dawn would halt its journey, and a full-scale search operation would commence. Helicopters were called in. The Italian Coast Guard prepared to sweep the waters. But deep down, the investigators already knew the truth. Melanie Weston was not lost at sea by accident. Someone had made sure she would never be found. At exactly 2:00 p.m., a specialized investigative team entered the Weston suite, their eyes scanning every inch of the pristine, eerily undisturbed room. The bed remained untouched, the minibar stocked, the curtains swayed gently in the ocean breeze. But as one officer stepped onto the balcony, something caught his eye. Tiny droplets of blood, barely visible against the white railing. He crouched, ran a gloved finger over the surface, and confirmed what everyone in that room had begun to suspect. Something violent had happened here. Inside, another officer examined the bathroom, its surfaces almost too clean, too perfect. The mirror shone, the sink sparkled, the floor was dry, and yet the unsettling absence of any signs of use was itself a clue. No discarded towels, no dampness, no smudges on the counter. When questioned, the housekeeping staff confirmed that no one had cleaned the suite since the previous evening. It meant one thing. Someone had meticulously wiped away any trace of what had happened. At 2:30 p.m., security turned their attention to Alex Weston's phone records. His call log was unremarkable, but his text messages revealed something far more damning, an ongoing conversation with Sarah Collins, the woman seen with him in the casino the night before. The messages were flirtatious, filled with inside jokes, casual plans, and then, at 12:37 a.m., just minutes before Melanie was last seen, a single message from Alex stood out. Tomorrow, everything changes. The implications were chilling. As investigators pieced together the timeline, another glaring anomaly emerged. At 3:15 p.m., Carla Gomez, the housekeeper who had first discovered the empty suite, provided one final piece of unsettling information. When she had entered that morning, the bed had been perfectly made, yet something was missing. The sheets, a full set of linens, including the top sheet, the fitted sheet, and two pillowcases, were unaccounted for. It was a small detail, one that could have easily gone unnoticed, but in the context of everything else, it was damning. It suggested a cleanup, an effort to erase something incriminating. By 3:30 p.m., the security team had reached a conclusion they could no longer ignore. Melanie Weston had not fallen, had not wandered off, had not simply disappeared. The blood on the balcony, the missing sheets, the chilling message to Sarah, all of it pointed in one direction. Melanie Weston had been murdered. At exactly 4 o'clock p.m., the decision was made. Elysium Dawn would not continue its journey. The ship was now a crime scene. At exactly 5 o'clock p.m., the security team reviewed the surveillance footage once again, this time focusing on the moments after Melanie was last seen. The grainy black and white recording of the balcony flickered on the screen. At 1:36 a.m., a new figure emerged, a man. His movements were deliberate, his posture tense. He stood near the railing, his body partially obscured by shadows. But then came the moment that changed everything. A sudden sharp movement, a shift in weight. And then the figure retreated indoors, closing the balcony doors behind. The figure disappeared inside, closing the balcony doors behind him. The officers rewound the footage, slowed it down, enhanced the contrast, watching frame by frame. The man's profile was faint, but recognizable. It was Alex Weston. At exactly 6 p.m., FBI investigators, now officially involved, combed through Alex's digital footprint. His internet search history revealed a peculiar query made weeks before the cruise, contrasting sharply with his usual searches about travel and finance. The room went silent. The implications were undeniable. At 6:45 p.m., armed with mounting evidence, investigators confronted Alex. He sat in the interrogation room, his expression eerily calm. He denied everything. He insisted Melanie had been drunk, had gone outside on her own, had simply vanished into the sea. But when officers presented the surveillance footage, his facade cracked. His jaw tightened, his breathing became shallow, his hands gripped the edges of the table. Yet still he refused to confess. At 7:30 p.m., investigators discovered a previously deleted message on Alex's phone, sent to Sarah Collins shortly after the balcony incident, implying a significant event had just occurred. There was no more doubt. The time for questioning was over. At 8 p.m., the cruise liner docked at the nearest port, where Italian authorities waited on the shore. The ship's once festive atmosphere had turned somber, passengers watching from a distance as uniformed officers boarded. At exactly 8:30 p.m., Alex Weston was led away in handcuffs, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the ground. The reality of what had happened finally settled over the ship. Melanie Weston was never coming back. At exactly 11 o'clock p.m., Alex Weston sat in a cold, sterile interrogation room at the Italian Port Police Station, his hands cuffed to the table, his gaze locked onto a single point on the wall. He hadn't spoken in over an hour. The weight of the evidence was crushing, yet he refused to say the words everyone in the room already knew to be true. Across from him, the lead investigator placed a thick folder onto the table and slowly opened it. Surveillance footage, blood analysis, deleted messages, everything was laid out in front of him. "This is your last chance," the investigator said, his voice steady, his eyes unblinking. "Tell us what happened to Melanie." But Alex remained silent. At 11:30 p.m., the charges were made official: first-degree murder, destruction of evidence, and premeditation. The Italian authorities coordinated with the FBI, preparing for an international legal battle that would ensure Alex Weston never walked free again. But there was still one unanswered question, the one that left a void in the case, the one that sent chills down the spines of everyone involved. Where was Melanie? The search for her body stretched into the following days. Helicopters, Coast Guard boats, and advanced sonar scans covered the waters near the ship's last recorded position. Divers scoured the depths, each mission ending with the same devastating result. There was nothing. No trace, no remains. It was as if she had been swallowed by the sea itself. At 2 a.m., the case took another turn. Sarah Collins, the woman Alex had been secretly involved with, was brought in for questioning. She denied everything. She claimed she had no knowledge of what Alex had planned, that she thought their relationship was nothing more than an affair, that she had never imagined it would come to this. But her life was ruined nonetheless. The media tore her apart, turning her into a symbol of betrayal and greed. Her career crumbled. Her face became infamous. The world no longer saw her as a woman. They saw her as an accomplice. By sunrise, the passengers of Elysium Dawn disembarked, forever haunted by the events they had unknowingly become part of. The ship continued its voyages across the Mediterranean, forever associated with the mystery of Melanie Weston. Speculations arose about her fate, with some suggesting her disappearance was more complex than initially understood. But one thing remained certain: perfect crimes didn't exist. The ocean had taken Melanie, but the truth had swallowed Alex whole.